Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Richard Suls. I'll be your host today at the Bug Bounty Program. What is a Bug Bounty Program and why does it matter? Webinar hosted by Reversec. And joining me today is our subject matter expert, Ben Berkowitz. We'll do a quick introduction before we get into things.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Berkowitz, as Richard just said. I'm a senior consultant here at Reversec. I am also the global chair of Assurance focus area, which is the pen testing that includes application security, network security, cloud security, tests such as those. And I've been saying eyeballs deep in bug bounty makes it sound like I wasn't having a good time almost every day for the past 5 years or so.
Thanks, Ben. So let's start simple. For those who are new to the concept, can you tell us what exactly is a bug bounty program?
Sure. So a bug bounty program is an initiative that an organization can operate that enables them to allow independent security researchers to report vulnerabilities in exchange for a reward, or in the case of a similar initiative of a vulnerability disclosure policy, safe harbor. So organizations operate lots of software or assets that can be reached by almost anyone in the public, but those individuals may find that if they identify a bug, they're hesitant to report it to the organization because the organization has not provided a pathway for them to do so or clarity on how they would like them to do so. So these programs help establish a code of conduct for both parties. It specifies the targets and the testing allowed within the scope. It defines what a valid report looks like, and then what separates the bug bounty program from the vulnerability disclosure, what the researcher can gain from participating in that type of research, specifically from the financial perspective.
Thanks, Ben. While we're just kind of talking about it at this high level, maybe you could share a success story where a bug bounty program uncovered something valuable and how that impacted the client's security posture.
Sure. So when we say something valuable, it might be more than just a single instance. It may be more the lots of different things that bug bounty can offer an organization. And that really comes from the unique perspective of bug bounty, which actually complements the existing security apparatus that they may have, such as pen testing, threat modeling, design review, other operations that they have going on internally. But one of the great things that bug bounty offers that those things don't is a really obvious and bona fide connection with the wider security community in the form of a reputation for really caring about it. If an organization can say, hey, not only do we care about security, that we are confident that someone can come in and not destroy us, which is nice, but they say, if you can find something, we want to know about it. And we won't attack you, we will treat you fairly, and we will invite you in to make us better, and we think you can benefit from that process as well. So in the programs that we've operated, just that relationship has really, really paid dividends when we have researchers who may be going around doing their independent research, finding something in not only the client's estate, but something the client uses that's very, very widely used. They may go around to different organizations with essentially a 0-day and start helping their, I guess, friends in the form of organizations fix those problems before anybody else. And so that alone is enough to at least convince me when I get to receive those bugs directly from the researchers that bug bounty is a really productive way for organizations to stay ahead of security and foster that relationship.
Great answer, and really interesting to hear, honestly. Let's talk about for a moment how it complements traditional security efforts. We're in many ways a traditional cybersecurity agency. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about some of the complementary strengths that you've observed between bug bounty and traditional pen testing, as it were?
Sure. So in what we consider to be mature, well-operated bug bounty programs, there is a division between bug bounty and particularly pen testing, but they're not necessarily competing with each other. They usually feed the same knowledge base. They end up with vulnerabilities tracked in the same central repository, and so they really seamlessly integrate together from the perspective of the organization. With that in mind, there are some things that pen testing simply does do better than bug bounty can, and vice versa. And so, for example, in a bug bounty situation, the engagement is indefinite. It's as long as the bug bounty program is operational. So there is a chance every single day, 24/7, every single day of the year, that a researcher is going to submit something that's going to make a really big impact to the organization itself. Whereas in a pen test, it does need to be time boxed, but the organization knows that the pen tester is going to focus their attention on something very specific, and therefore, if they have a particular area in question, of interest rather, they can guarantee someone will be looking at it. There are ways to incentivize bug bounty researchers to do that, but it's not an outright guarantee. On the flip side, bug bounty researchers are really defined by their scope, and so they're very invested, often financially invested, in enumerating that scope as much as they possibly can. So bug bounty offers organization footprinting, essentially, where there might be things that the organization does have in their inventory that, if you're a large organization, multiple offices all around the world, lots of different teams, lots of different infrastructure, that all is looked at externally to a bug bounty researcher as the company, that complexity internally can make it hard to see all of that. And so we may have an asset which falls out of use but is still externally accessible. Bug bounty researchers, as soon as they find something like that, they will begin testing on it. And it's often those things, because they've fallen out of focus from the internal organization, that enter a state of vulnerability. So in short, a pen test wouldn't focus on something that the organization isn't really paying a lot of attention to, but we can almost guarantee that bug bounty researchers will be.
Fantastic. And again, very interesting. It's quite the differentiation, honestly. And until I did bug bounty myself, never realized how they are quite complementary and not at all targeting the same space. So again, kind of sticking with understanding how it works with traditional security efforts, what's the best way you've observed internal security teams best integrating bug bounty findings into their ongoing remediation workflows?
So this is similar to what I had mentioned before of there's a funnel which goes to a central tracker. And what can really separate a bug bounty program that causes an impact to one that may have less is someone who's making that translation from, here we have raw information about how to exploit a vulnerability, and in a pen test you bring in a consultant who not only knows how to exploit this, but can also understand, usually within the context of the organization, how to remediate it. And so bug bounty vulnerabilities within the organization should be treated the same way. So in the most mature bug bounty programs, there are internal staff in the organization, in addition to the researchers, who can explain the context of these reports, put them into the context of the organization, and find the best path towards remediation. Because researchers, they are operating usually from the entirely external perspective, and the organization, if they're playing things safe, usually don't invite them in to test things internally or provide them with more information than they absolutely need to until they do absolutely need to. So the researcher can't usually provide as focused advice on remediation or even spot if there's some sort of systemic issue outside of the one vulnerability that they reported. So for an organization to best get use out of those reports, they need to treat them the same way they would an internally identified vulnerability and say, all right, we've got this theme of vulnerability which keeps showing up. I bet this is somewhere else. Let's talk to our different teams. Let's scale up these remediation efforts and see if we can fix something systemically, which from a pen test can absolutely happen, and bug bounty absolutely must happen because we've got a huge scope here and a lot of opportunities to learn about the whole organization.
Fantastic. And you mentioned something that I'd like to drill into a little bit. You mentioned, bug bounty programs organizations aren't typically inviting these researchers in. So I think what I'm hearing, and from my experience really, is that a lot of bug bounty occurs on production systems. Have you found that to be the case? And if so, could you kind of talk about that and how that differs, again, from traditional pen testing and what value that brings?
Sure. It is almost by definition that bug bounty is going to be in production because it's designed for researchers to test on things that they do have access to. And I suppose it is possible for an organization to take a development environment and make it publicly accessible, but I would argue that they should think twice before doing something like that. And if a researcher does identify something that is not in production, they can access it, and maybe there's a researcher who maybe isn't just a researcher in it for good faith, who's actually, some sort of hacker who's maybe trying to extort them or find their information, find that bug and get their payout a different way. We would rather have the bug bounty researcher be able to report that as part of the bug bounty. So in short, it's not that bug bounty is impossible to do on internal systems, but an organization needs to be very careful, and usually it's just simply more challenging to invite the general public to come inside, see something that is not finished, and then escalate or potentially escalate the impact of any vulnerabilities that they find from being, okay, this is something that we can wall off behind an external DMZ, and something internal which can be connected to other more sensitive networks.
Okay, something else that you mentioned was that an organization is going to use their bug bounty information to generate more information or more basically threat intelligence based on these reports. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that brings value to the organization as well?
Absolutely. So a mature security program within an organization has their blue team, they have their analysts, and they're following trends, and they can stay ahead of them. But it is the agility of the bug bounty researcher, sometimes compared explicitly with the penetration testing organization, where they shine. So an organization may have some threat intelligence of, we know that there has been a proof of concept coming, or there is a recent CVE that's been posted about something. We're going to do what we can to try to mitigate this before it becomes a problem. They may then need to do some sort of internal spot check to say, all right, let's test everything ahead of this, make sure that we're not going to be vulnerable. But that can be challenging if on a Monday, a CVE is announced, and then on a Tuesday, someone posts a proof of concept, and we've got a buffer overflow in production, or at least externally facing systems, we've got problems. This is where a bug bounty program can really show its benefit, because there will be researchers out there who want to find those, and they don't want to break things, and they want to seize the opportunity to show an organization, hey, there's something here that could be vulnerable, perhaps faster than the organization orienting its entire focus onto that specific problem. They can also really benefit from, well, the researchers rather, can benefit from the security community's research that's published by others. So in our programs, we do see that when there's a big event such as DEF CON, within weeks, sometimes hours of a talk going out, there will be proofs of concept that come into the program of, here's a new entire class of vulnerability that we haven't seen yet, and there's some research we need to do about it internally, but there are researchers who are already sitting on the edge of their seats trying to learn everything they can about it and turning that into actionable intelligence within hours of that research debuting.
Fantastic. And you've talked about a lot about researchers, and I want to get to how the bug bounty program helps to collaborate with them and best practices, but we have a great question in the chat that's relevant to this part of the webinar, and that is, in your experience, what kind of vulnerabilities tend to surface in bug bounty programs that traditional testing might miss?
Sure. So bug bounty's advantage is, I guess, testing in production more often than not in this arena, where in a pen test, it's not always a great idea to test in production. It can be very disruptive, but more often than not, production environments, especially those that are externally facing, have very complicated network stacks. you've got your content delivery networks, you've got your load balancers, you've got your web application firewalls, where if I'm doing an application test with my pen tester hat on, I want most of those things out of the way because I'm trying to evaluate the application almost in a little nutshell. And so it's possible to have a gap of when we're looking at the application versus when we're looking at the application in the context of its final form, complexities that can introduce vulnerability. And the best example I've seen, or we've seen of this in the bug bounty space has been around HTTP request smuggling, which is a bug which receives a lot of attention or has received a lot of attention in the past couple of years. This is the bug I'm thinking of when I talk about research presented at Black Hat and turning it around quickly into actionable reports, because it does fall between the cracks of that complicated network stack. And it can be very hard to detect and spot because it breaks HTTP on a regular basis. So when a report like that comes in, it immediately allows the bug bounty response team to put their rapid response hats on. There's a lot of hats that they wear, I suppose, and start turning that information around of, okay, this is something that we probably couldn't have spotted from an internal perspective, but now we have maybe only one or two instances of it externally. We need to now see what we can see about getting ahead of other researchers reporting this to us to make sure that we're safer faster.
Fantastic. And very interesting, honestly. It's, again, quite complementary in ways that I would not have expected. So let's talk for a moment about the researchers themselves. In your experience, and I know you've done this for many years, what are some of the best practices for collaborating with researchers specifically?
Sure. So we talk about a program, and we often talk about a program from the organization's perspective as this is a line item in the budget, or this is certain number of seats that we need to allocate towards doing this. But realistically, a bug bounty program is only as good as the researchers who participate in it. And a program can launch, and if they have no researchers, there are not going to be any bugs that come in. And that relationship that we were talking about earlier about how an organization can benefit really from that relationship, it needs to be a relationship with someone. And the best way to start that off on the right foot is to understand that the researchers and the response team and the organization are all on the same team. They are working together to try to identify these bugs and understand what sort of insights these reports can offer. And so the response teams and the organizations need to be fair with the researchers. And more often than not, they're operating in completely good faith. Some of them are on the newer end of things. They might report something that is not actually very impactful, or they might not fully understand what they're getting at. But we want to encourage researchers to come forward with this because they can only spend their time and their effort in so many places, and the organization would prefer that it's them. So communicating clearly with the researchers, telling them, yes, this is what we would like from you. Hey, we noticed that your report contains X, Y, Z, but we have questions 1, 2, 3 about this. Maybe even challenging things, but in a fair way, because sometimes the researchers absolutely understand the bug better than the organization. They are the ones who reported it after all. So giving them the benefit of the doubt, not immediately shutting them down, even when they make a mistake that's relatively simple. This could be someone who learns a little bit, goes back to class, comes back, finds something no one's ever seen before, and we want them to remember the pleasant experience they had with that program. So there's a whole art, I suppose, to managing that researcher relationship and making them feel like a friend. And it could be, especially when they're the big fish researchers, the ones who are speaking at DEF CON, the ones who are speaking at conferences or publishing important white papers, we want to encourage them to participate. So we want to let them know, hey, we really appreciate this. This can be as simple as bonuses, but it can also be recognizing the insights that even a duplicate report can offer. Bug bounty in general rewards the first to find a vulnerability, And it can be that a researcher puts a lot more effort into fully exploring the impact of the same bug as someone who was quick. But in our opinion, we would make sure that both of those researchers, both the fast and the thorough, get some sort of reward or at least recognition because both of them provided insight that benefited the security of the organization.
Wow, great answer. And I think at least, there's more to it than this, obviously, but what I'm hearing is that it takes a strong communicator to be a good bug bounty subject matter expert, and to be a good liaison between the researchers and the organization. I mean, we know there's bug bounty platforms out there, and that they tend to try and help organizations handle their bug bounty, handle what they're doing with bug bounty. But I think that there's value that you've already spoken to with this level of communication, but additional value that researchers and that organizations stand to gain by directly working with subject matter experts, real human beings who help to interface between the researchers, the organization, the platform. Can you talk about some of the things that you think that the SMEs such as yourself bring in terms of value in that middle level moderation, so to speak?
Sure. So what the key word that I want to latch onto what you said there is the subject matter expert. And the subject in question is not simply bug bounty, but sort of security in general. And it should simply be that if a researcher reports a bug to an organization, they should have faith that the person who reads that report understands security well enough to score that bug accurately. There may be some mitigating factors they're unaware of. There may be some aggravating factors that they're not aware of, but they need to have, both parties need to know that the one who is reading that report on the organization's end for the first time knows what to do with this, knows how to take something that a researcher may call a low, see, hey, maybe there's something over here that the researcher has missed because they don't know our internal system is, I'll say, susceptible to these types of vulnerabilities. Perhaps this is something internally we need to treat as a medium, and then the researcher should, I guess, have that recognized because they did what they could. But we also have to deal with the flip side of that, where a researcher who is, financially motivated here, they make more from a critical than they do a high, so they're going to put their best case forward for why something is a critical instead of a high. And a subject matter expert needs to understand, okay, I see their fair points, here are some fair counterpoints, but there needs to be an honest and fair discussion evaluating that, not let's as an organization try to pay out as little as possible. So there are some disputes with researchers that are bound to come up. Both parties are financially invested in this transaction and they want to either make the most that they can or save where they can. So dealing with a neutral mediator can be the solution to helping out with that. In addition to that, a bug bounty researcher's time is their most precious resource. And unlike someone like a pen tester, they only get income when they actually find something. So from the organization side, they may fall into the, I guess, good situation of being in a bug bounty program that no one is submitting any bugs to anymore. This hopefully is because the program is very mature and most of the bugs have been found already, but it starts to not be as useful to the organization if researchers get bored. If they think that they're not going to be able to find anything in that scope, they're going to stop looking and move on to potentially greener pastures. So there is the organization needs to encourage them to come back through their relationship as well as simple gamification type things. Right now it's October 29th. An organization could have, spooky Halloween weekend hackfest, all rewards doubled, and bring that attention back from researchers that they know are good, but maybe focused on something else right now. Let's see if we can get some attention back on our program from people that we trust.
Really interesting. So two things that I really heard stand out from your answer are that you're maintaining positive relationships with these researchers as an individual, and it sounds like you also kind of govern some of the purse strings. So I imagine you've saved organizations a lot of money by doing due diligence on bug bounty, where you're still awarding researchers their due, but probably saving a lot of payouts by just doing a little bit of subject matter expert understanding, so to speak.
Certainly. And that is one of the benefits that when we think about bug bounty from the organization's perspective, there is the element of the bug bounty response team who are themselves, trained pen testers or hackers in their own right, but they need to have the skills to take that tip off from a researcher on one place and recognize that it can be in many other places. While the researchers will submit new reports to that organization, the organization should not just sit there and wait for another researcher to find it in another instance. They do need to stay on their guard and leverage the information that they got from the first researcher to make sure that maybe researchers 2, 3, 4, all the way to 15 are finding something after the investigation has already begun.
Very cool. Hey, so let's move on a little bit to lessons learned and some of the really juicy nuggets that you've picked up over the many years that you've been running successful bug bounty programs. At a high level, what metrics or indicators tell you that a program is succeeding?
So this is a nuanced answer because there's lots of definitions of success. And we could go with the definition of there's no more bugs. We know people are testing things, but we only ever get informatives. We only ever get duplicates of things that we have yet to fix. And in many ways, that is what success looks like. Ultimately, we don't want there to be any more bugs, right? That's the goal of security in general. But in reality, that's not always how it works. So I'll define success as how well does it benefit the organization in terms of its own operation, or better phrased, how well has it integrated with their existing security apparatus? Can bug bounty inform the entire security ecosystem and vice versa within an organization? Is bug bounty so integrated within the way the organization thinks about security that they can learn about something from bug bounty, have that enter their consciousness, and then the next time that they do a design review on something that has yet to even exist, they're thinking about that risk that they originally heard about from bug bounty. But also the opposite can be true. If there's something that purely from a pen testing perspective, they've identified, they know, hey, we've seen a propensity for these types of bugs in our pen tests, which we've only identified internally, that information should travel back up the chain to the bug bounty program, which can say, hey, we'll make an adjustment to our reward scheme saying, all right, instead of having a Halloween fun week, we can say we're particularly interested in these types of vulnerabilities. So if researchers are able to find them, we will pay an additional reward. So a successful bug bounty is really a program is an appendage of a healthy security organization, security apparatus within an organization.
Fantastic. It's obvious that you know this topic inside and out, quite frankly. Let me ask you, for companies that are maybe less mature with their bug bounty program or have not started one, a company that's thinking about starting their first program, perhaps, what's the single most important piece of advice you'd give them? And let me preface this answer for the audience by saying Ben and I have talked about this at length, and we wanted to narrow it down to one, but I think we got to about 4 single pieces of advice that we could narrow it down to. So expect more than one single piece. But yeah, if you could, would you share some important pieces of advice that you've gleaned over the years?
Certainly. So this transitions seamlessly, I hope, from the previous answer of integrating the processes with the security apparatus. And that might be one of the 4, but I'll jump into the second one, which may be, in order for that to succeed, existing security teams need to be informed about the bug bounty process and involved in decision-making before it's launched. There is a propensity for some organizations to, particularly those that are scared of a bug bounty program, thinking of it as we're just going to invite anyone off the street to come hack everything, where some teams within the organization may be ready and some may not. So there could be, say, an application team which knows that they're ready. They may go first in the bug bounty scope. They may be the first to, scope items or targets for the researchers to focus on when the program is first launched. And then depending on how that goes, or depending how other teams catch up to that point, they can slowly roll out the bug bounty program towards the general public. Or not towards the general public, but to a smaller, maybe invite-only group of researchers that they previously dealt with. And this might be a group that they know personally. It may be a group of researchers who have submitted to them in the past. And they, in that case, can test it out, see how a program, or rather an application team, is responsive to that type of bug bounty testing, and see if there's any special care that the program needs to take when dealing with that.
Amazing. We have some real good questions in the chat. And this is kind of an adjacent one to what I just asked you, and that is there an ideal point in a company's security maturity journey to launch a bug bounty program?
So I can give a general rule of thumb, which is an extension of what we might answer about pen testing, which is if an organization, or even just a single application or any system that's under development, was not designed with security in mind from the get-go, they'll get a very long pen test report, but there wasn't really a chance for them to defend themselves or get ready ahead of time. And I would extend that into the bug bounty space as well. If an organization has not previously invested in getting their ducks in a row before they invite the general public to start evaluating them, they may find that they're paying out a lot of money for things they could have easily identified internally a little bit more easily. So simply opening up a bug bounty program when there isn't any way of, I guess, one, preparing for those bugs from the technological perspective, but also from the governance perspective. An organization needs to understand what they're going to do with those bugs, instead of just having a big list of tickets piling up. There does need to be strategy planning ahead of time on the strategy of fixing them, handling them, escalating them, figuring out what to do when something systemic comes up. So in short, to answer the question, not immediately within their development.
But what I'm hearing, I think, in a thematic kind of way, is that bug bounty requires thoughtfulness at each step. Thoughtfulness in the way that you're interacting with the researchers, thoughtfulness in the way that it communicates internally within the company, the organization, thoughtfulness in the way that the findings are impacting. So that's fantastic, and it can obviously bring a lot of value. It's just obviously something that can't be automated purely because it requires an intelligent person behind the wheel. Now, I want to turn to a question that we have from the audience, and I think you've covered this for the most part, but I want to make sure that you don't have anything to add, basically. So what kind of value can a well-run bug bounty program bring to a company's overall security posture? And as I say, I think you've covered this a lot, but I wanted to make sure we covered all of our audience questions.
Sure, I'll try to tie a nice little bow around it if I can, but the first thing that comes to mind is, I guess, the reputation of security and caring about the security community enough to say, we are confident and we are also listening. An organization which doesn't want to hear from the general public about bugs that the average person may be able to find creates this, I guess, tension or this inaccessibility of there could be good faith researchers or even just good faith users who say, hey, I was able to view someone else's private account just by clicking a button, but I don't want to get in trouble for telling you that I accessed someone else's account. If there's no avenue for them to report this, it creates some tension. And if that were to get to the wrong publication, that could spell trouble for the organization. So purely from a relationship management perspective, bug bounty is an avenue for honesty to benefit all the parties involved. From a technical perspective and a security perspective, there is the continuous nature of bug bounty that traditional pen testing can't usually provide. The idea that the scope is constantly growing and changing, and things are coming up, things are going down, something may come up that the person creating it is thinking it's just experimental and internally facing only, but is actually accessible from the public perspective. If a hacker were to find that, they could exploit it even though there isn't a pen test scheduled to find something about it. So it's the benefits of the constant potential for constant coverage, the footprinting, and the emphasis on the breadth of testing that bug bounty offers rather than the depth that pen testing traditionally offers.
Fantastic. And that kind of segues into another question from our audience, and that is, have there been any standout success stories? And I think you kind of touched on this, but I think there's probably more to discuss. Have there been any standout success stories or vulnerabilities discovered that might have otherwise gone unnoticed?
Sure. I will say that my favorite example of this is going to have to be request smuggling. Surprise to no one who's been listening. I've already mentioned it prior in this conversation, but that has been the one shining example of the clearest benefit in the programs that we've managed. When it first came into the program that we were working on with this client, the team didn't fully understand, the internal team, and in some ways the response team. It was kind of new. They didn't know what smuggling was, didn't fully understand what the impact could be, and it was up to these researchers who did to begin the conversation about smuggling internally. And sure, this could have happened eventually. Internally, the blue team's own threat intelligence are reading the same articles that the researchers are, but they would have to move a little bit more slowly. But what started with a couple of reports turned into being able to spot what turned out to be a systemic issue in not just the request smuggling angle of it, but the way that the organization had structured their externally facing network infrastructure in a way that wasn't always ready for this kind of management or inspection from not just bug bounty researchers, but long story short, it could become vulnerable in a way that they hadn't spotted before, and that was the result of an investigation that began through a bug bounty report. So they didn't know about the bug yet. They learned about it for the first time. Exploitation, same thing, and mitigation, same thing. And that led to ultimately process changes to improve the way the organization handled its own security internally.
And I think that what's important to note, in addition to what you said, is that this was, again, on external infrastructure, on places where this bug could have been found by a threat actor rather than a researcher. And therefore, what you're effectively saying is that this was something that was caught by the good guys before it could be found by the bad guys, at least in theory.
Absolutely. And I think one of the great things, if not the main benefit that comes from bug bounty, is it allows not random people, but it allows external skilled people to turn events that could have been incidents into reports. If we put one little slogan on bug bounty, that's the one I would like. Turn incidents into reports instead.
That's great. And one of my favorite sayings is you can never really see the forest for the trees, right? So as a bug bounty researcher, you have a unique external perspective that an organization, even filled with fantastic security researchers, which they often are, may not spot, just for the point in their perception that they're looking through. So,
correct.
Ben, we're reaching a close to this webinar. Would you like to offer any wrap or closing thoughts before I thank the audience and return them to their day?
We have talked about this before. You and I actually did an event, Richard, a couple of months ago. I'm pretty sure that you do remember, where we both gave a talk. I gave a talk about bug bounty. Richard gave a talk about crisis management. And so I recommend that you go check out that event just so you could see Richard's talk. But there's also some more stuff from bug bounty if you want to hear more about what we do there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ben, so much. It's been really enlightening, a really interesting conversation. You've been working on bug bounty for as long as I've known you and longer, and people internally and externally turn to you as an SME. I just want to remind the audience that you can get in touch with us via the website. I'm going to put a slide up here for you to see right now. And we'd be happy to send you that other bug bounty talk via email that Ben mentioned. It's on our YouTube channel as well, under our New York briefing. You'll find a great series of talks by subject matter experts there, not just myself, though I appreciate the nod. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching and for the great questions. We look forward to further webinars and great participation in the future. Please don't hesitate to get in touch, and thank you again.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.